read a book by a name McGraw, and he helped me out some, but then I have other thoughts. I think I'm going to get into my thoughts, and then I'm going to speak some on that as we go along. So let's turn to Romans chapter 1.
Yes.
So Paul here is writing to a Gentile culture, a culture immersed in sexual perversions, immersed in deviant behavior and atheism. And in those perversions, this culture would try to make you ashamed for being a Christian. They really would. They try to make you ashamed for being a Christian. And Paul here says in verse 1 and 16, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation, unto everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek." So Paul wasn't just saying, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, but Paul was also saying, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ in this perverted culture that I'm living in,
Right, yes.
where everything has been perverted.
Right.
The culture that Paul entered into was a culture where I think Herod was on his second husband.
Husband, really?
Second husband. It was a culture of great deviancy, pedophilia, abuse of women, abuse of children, and we've run into this culture again. We know this because later on, let's look at.
Yes.
We'll go down. Verse 18, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth, and in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even as eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." So God has revealed himself to man.
Yes.
And God said, I have by the invisible things, by the world around us, it not only the unity of those things revealed the Godhead, the triune God, and how all those things are working together, but you've denied this. You deny the revelation of God that is in you. You want to deny the God that you know, are to suppress him.
Yes.
For the verse 21, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. God will darken a foolish heart. They first darken it themselves, and God will allow their foolish heart to be darkened and to believe that there's not a God, or to try to suppress that there's not a God. One thing is, to worship something is universal.
Yes. Yes, sir.
You can't, in every culture, there has not been a culture found where man is not worshiping something. And man will worship.
Right. Yes. Amen.
Man will worship.
Yes.
And what they worship, they will become like what they worship.
Yes. That's true.
So, I think it was Plato or Socrates, all their gods were sensual and lasciviousness and wickedness, and I forget which one of those two, I could look it up, said we can't teach this to our children. It'll pervert them.
Right.
So we live in a very perverted society. Because when you deny God, Paul is going to go on and say that now you begin to worship one another. You begin to make the creature your God. And this leads to sensuality. And leads to looseness. So atheism is always a step to a perverse culture. Always has been, always will be. I believe atheism is in its twilight. I believe atheism has been dealt some fatal blows. It's not working out. It's not working out how they thought it would work out.
That's right.
Too many people are getting hurt by it.
Yes, sir.
They say atheism rise was, and some of this is from the book I read, was Bastille in France, that culture that was loose and sensual that developed from that. And it rose, and you had Karl Marx,
Yes.
who wrote that religion is the opium of the people, that we can drug the people, and it's the opium that allows the people to have some sanity religion. But if we can get something in there that would stop the oppression of the people, they would naturally leave God. That experiment did not work out.
Right.
Matter of fact,
Right.
atheism does not liberate but binds people.
That's right.
The bloodiest century we ever had
Yes.
was the 20th century,
Yes, sir.
when atheism was in its strength, and I think 50% of the world was under atheistic governments. The experiment didn't work. It was an utter flop. They tried to wipe out religion, but they couldn't do it even by violence. Karl Marx's theory did not work, that if we had this utopia socialistic society, that people would naturally leave God, because God is embedded in man.
That's right.
God is embedded in man, and man is going to turn to God, and man needs God.
Yes.
And some of this atheism was from a religion that had no life or no vital contact with God. This form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. See, if you live in a religion where you speak of God, but God is far off, as if He's not there, eventually He will be dead to you, and you'll abide atheism. And so we had this, and we found out atheism actually does not liberate, but bind the people, and is actually the opium of the people, that actually destroys liberty and freedom.
Yes.
And right now, there's a vision of a man who, and I hope I can say this properly, had people in cells, but then there was one looking out, and everyone was in their own cell. And that's what they're doing to people now. It's called identity politics. They're putting people in groups and dividing people one from another. And this group doesn't get along with this group, and trying to separate. The ultimate goal is Karl Marx also wrote the abolition of the family, to destroy the family, something that God set up. Because if you can destroy the family, you can destroy the proper vision of people have of the church and of what God means.
Yes.
And so we dealt with all of this, and the loose cultures and the abortion and the hate and all of this, because we wanted to do away with God.
Right. Yes.
We look today at the cultures that have done away with God. We can look right now at Ireland and all that's going on because we've done away with God, and the harm and the self-hurt and the suicide and the crime and the all because we say we don't want God.
Right.
And they try to promise us a utopia. It's not unusual that that man, that 17-year-old boy, body was cut up, cut into pieces when we're taking little babies in the womb and cutting them up in pieces.
All right.
That's right.
When we lose the value of human dignity, when we say that
Yes.
we're pond scum and we were born without a purpose, we live without a purpose, and we die without a purpose, people are living as if they're zombies with no purpose,
Right.
no reason to live.
Yes.
And the increase in this
Right.
is as you watch the denial of God, we see the increase of this culture that's destroying itself.
Yes. Amen.
This culture is destroying itself, and they don't have the integrity or the knowledge to know why is this happening? Why is this going on?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So Paul here is bringing this out, and then he goes into this sexual revolution, what's happening in Rome. Let me tell you, the sexual revolution is not progressive, it's regressive.
Right.
Paul did away with that. And the early morning church preached on the goddess of Diana, and they set woman at liberty,
That's right.
and they made men men, and they put families together,
That's
and
right.
that was the standard of the culture until there's a man named Kinsey who rose up and had all kinds of studies about sensuality, and he used pedophiles and all kinds of to put out false understanding, and people bought into it. And now we live in a society where the sexual revolution is imploding on itself.
Right.
And we see the diseases. We see the broken homes. We see the crying children. Where's mommy? Where's daddy? We see the harm. We see the hurt. Because people decide that they don't need God. They think they can do things outside of God,
Right.
and everything will work out just fine. And that era is ending.
Yes.
The atheist is really even giving up. The atheist used to have a firm belief that there was no God, and that they're actually anti-God, or they were against it. But now the atheist says, well, we don't say whether there's a God or not. So it's actually a surrender. It's actually the truth is causing them to surrender and take a compromised position because what their position is not working out.
Amen.
It's in man to want God,
Yes.
and we have to show the culture what it means
Amen.
to be a Christian,
Yes.
and what it means to have a godly relationship and godly purity.
Yes.
They're not. At one time, I was in the city center, and Christians aren't committing suicide, and we're under more pressure than anyone else. We have more coming against us than anyone else. But I don't know one Christian has committed suicide.
That's true.
I don't know one Christian who has. But all around us, we see the wreck of it. And we have all the answers. Now, there's a lot of directions we could go now. But I just, in order, I want to talk about pornography just for a few minutes.
Amen.
Not long, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Amen.
And how does this all relate? If you read further on in Romans 1, it speaks of the deviant behavior of man, even if they did not like to retain God in their knowledge.
Yes.
God gave them over to a reprobate mind. A reprobate mind is a mind that can't judge properly. If we ever in a time where we can't judge properly, it's now. People do not know how to judge right from wrong.
That's right.
want to speak of pornography because it's a sin that they're even trying to get into the schools.
Yes, sir.
They think it's innocent. They think it doesn't harm anyone. And why not? We find that in pornography, as pornography increases, so does human trafficking increase.
Yes, sir.
Not pornography, human trafficking. Anyone who looks at pornography is supporting human trafficking.
Amen. Yes, sir.
Human trafficking includes women, and it includes little children, and even babies, who are kidnapped at an increasing rate and brought in to satisfy the lustful desires of men. You might say, well, I would never look at, and I'm not just talking about the world.
Yes.
I don't look at hard pornography. Everybody starts with soft pornography. All around us there's soft pornography, sensual looks, sensual here, sensuality here, and trying to pull you into the hard pornography,
Yes.
where eventually there's people who are looking at little children doing acts that are disgusting, and they got caught up into that, and there's deliverance for that.
Yes.
Yes.
So every click to a pornography site, and they said 500 sites are going online, I think, per day. New sites. There's like, how many people are in the world? There's like 7 million, billion rather, and I think the number of hits is 20 times that. So the total number of hits on porn sites every year. And now we have a huge market where our little children are being captured to be pulled into this.
Yes.
And in order to get to where we were in our sexual revolution, we had to have pornography.
Yes.
Hugh Hefner started out with Playboy
Yes.
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 and began to pervert our society and cause souls to be lost and cause little children to be hurt. And that's what really bothers me about this whole thing. It is a woman who are being hurt. They promised them freedom, but they're brought into bondage. This culture brings people into bondage. The easiest way I said it is the alcohol feels like a big man when he buys his first drink. But by the time he's into that, he's emptying out his pocket and becomes a slave of alcohol.
Right.
There's all kinds of people that are slaves of all kinds of sexual sins. That they'll do drugs that will keep them going by night so they can go all weekend long. There's this whole culture that's trying to pull people in, and only God can deliver them. Only God can cause them to escape out of this culture that is set up all around us.
That's right.
Trying to pull you in the end. You're not pretty or you're not handsome unless you look a certain way. This move to destroy the family and to bring in this culture has made men emasculate and made an objectified woman and made woman something as an object. It didn't set them free at all. They're more bound up now than ever before.
Right.
We look at the suicides, the sexual diseases, the depressions, the hurts from this culture is beyond estimation, and we wouldn't have time to get all into that. And I understand, I think it was Paul who said, keep thyself pure.
Amen.
Keep yourself pure. Keep yourself pure. There's something about being clean. There's something about knowing you're all right with God and you have a pure mind and a pure heart. Blessed are the pure in heart.
Yes.
Thank the Lord.
Yes. Amen.
So, human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise, I think, in the world at this time. It's growing quickly because we're becoming more and more perverted because we've forgotten God. Instead of seeing the value of a child, are a woman, we see them as objects to be abused for our own pleasure. The buying and selling of young boys and girls is growing at a shocking rate. Can you imagine this? And we want to let this loose. They want to let this loose in the schools all over the world. Well, who's behind this? That we know it's destructive and it's destroying lives.
Yes.
And we know that little children are being trafficked, and let's say that word right, and taken into this.
Yes. Yes.
And people are saying, I'm innocent from it, and yet involved in this business of looking at it. The Bible at the end of Romans 1, it says not only those who do it, but those who have pleasure in them that do it.
Yes.
You might say, I never do it, but if you have pleasure in them that do it, you are just as guilty.
Yes.
You're not any less guilty.
Amen.
And so we're really dealing with something in our time. Porn must be stopped. It's not normal. I think a lawyer association, I don't have the exact number with me, but divorce, pornography is involved. I think it was like 80%. I'm giving a low number. It's destroying the foundation of society.
That's right.
It's this whole culture. And we say we can do without God. Pornography is not, it is when you get pulled into it and you're trapped into it, sin is never satisfied. You always have to go deeper in sin. It will pull you in to where there's violence, harm,
Yes, sir.
hurt.
Amen.
There's one young lady that was doing something live and people were watching and she killed herself and no one tried to stop her. And it's violence. It's satanic, it's devilish, and it doesn't belong.
Amen.
Yes.
How do these criminals get away with this? Because of the demand.
Yes.
There's a demand for it. If people would cut out their demand, to me, to look at pornography would be to say, I don't care about children, I don't care about women,
Right.
I don't care about nothing but my own sensual
Yes.
little pleasure.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
As this culture, as this buying and selling of young children, as this is going on, there must be a people like Paul who put the
Yes.
goddess of Diana out of business.
Amen.
That's good.
That he taught it in such a way that the coppersmiths who got together, Demetrius wasn't it, who said, what are we going to do? This man's going to put us out of business. And most scholars said the worship of Diana was a sexual, deviant worship. What are we going to do? One time Paul was in a city and he looked round about and he was stirred in his soul when he seen what was going on.
Yes. Amen.
Sometimes we need to be stirred in our souls about what's going on. We need people that can cry out loud and be able to let people know where is this all taking us? Where will we end up if we go on this course that we're on right now? Where is the end of this?
Yes.
There's no stopping it. There's no stopping.
Right.
There's not a place where you can say enough is enough. You can never say, if you're involved in sin, it will pull you in and you can't stop yourself. You can't extract yourself by yourself. It will take a divine hand of God and a divine will of God.
Yes.
a divine working of God to extract people from this culture that we
Yes,
live in.
amen.
This culture, and they can't even see it's destroying them. It's destroying them. I think about, oh my, the little children who are hurt. Something, a pain, they can be saved and they can be healed and understand all that. There's a pain there that will follow them all their lives. I just don't see how any person with any ounce of humanity in themselves could even consider such things. Have a society where even our little children are bombarded with sexual images all over. Bombarded. They can't be girls and boys anymore. They can't just play ball innocently. But no, they have to be bombarded with sexual things they can't even have a childhood anymore because this devil, this Satan that's behind all of this is causing our little children to lose their childhood and just having a nice time. I remember as a boy, I had some nice times. I wasn't, I had some troubles, but I had some nice times. And I would that all the little children wouldn't have to know anything about all this foolishness and just play ball and have a nice time and just enjoy it. But no, we're not satisfied with that. We want to change them into girls. We want to remove things, puberty blockers. What are we doing? Can you imagine? Confusion of these children and women the first time they're forced into this. The pain they must feel. How many are complicit in this? Educators, politicians, the government, school teachers, preachers, complicit in this harm, all under the name freedom. I said about the alcohol, we'll end up giving when you start buying this pornography, you'll empty out everything to have it. There's priests who've been caught in this, lawyers, doctors. These monsters of iniquity. I don't know where I got this stat, but the average age of people trafficking in prostitution is 12 to 14 years old. I don't know if that's right. I don't know where I got that, but it happens. To view pornography is an enabler. These brute beasts whose mouths must be stopped. They capture little children and women and they force them to watch pornography so they could learn how to do it themselves. Desensitize. The devil always presents things as innocent. The world wants to present this as innocent. pick up your phone and look at this, and you're innocent, I want to say you're very guilty.
Amen.
You're guilty. How do we pick up the pieces? How do we pick up all these pieces? We as a church, these hurting people, when they come, you need to treat them really good. They're going to be fearful and hurting. But you need to, and they might even back off from you some. And your first impression might be, well, they don't want to talk. And you're right, but you know what? You're going to have to win.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have to see the love of God. We're going to see more and more hurting people.
Yes, sir.
We can go to the city center and you can almost spot these people. God has healing for them. They are the oppressed.
Amen.
And God can help. There's those who have committed these horrendous acts. God can forgive you. Remove the addiction. While they promised you liberty, they addicted you.
Right.
And you became this monster. God can set you free.
Amen.
All the children of the world are ours.
Yes.
All the children of the world are
That's
ours.
right.
We have a beautiful, safe place.
Amen.
We want to be a place where people can be healed from their addictions, and those who have been hurt can also be healed. And in this society that we live in, the same thing is going on in every area of the sexual revolution. We're not foolish. We don't have to be ashamed. There's not one thing that I said was wrong today. And I could go into every other area of this sexual revolution and do the same thing, how it's destroying lives and people, how it's anti-God. It's an attack against God.
Yes, sir.
The early morning church preached strong against this.
That's right.
Not only strong did they preach, but they preached a message of conversion. They preached a message that this is a sin against God, and God drove it underground to the great extent. I'm not saying it didn't appear here and there, but it wasn't just accepted culturally. God drove it underground,
Right.
and we need to do the same thing.
Amen.
We need to have an understanding, a grasp of this, a hate of this, that God can save souls, deliver people by the power of God out of this culture, that God can open up their eyes, their blind eyes, that they be able to see what's going on and have a place where they can be delivered to.
Amen.
Yes.
And this is the battle, one of the battles we face
Yes.
in our time.
Amen. Yes.
Atheism is a mess. Everything that follows is destruction.
Right.
Destruction. Not liberation. I think that's what I have today.
Lord.
But, Lord, help and bless.
Yes.
And I don't know what time it is. Is there any questions? Is there any questions or comments? There might be some good comments. Additions. What are we going to do about it, brethren? What do we do? All right, we'll stop there. Thank the Lord.